Guys, wake up.
Where are we?
Oh, my head again. Why do you do this to me?
Hey, sleepyheads. I gotta admit, I thought you guys were never going to wake up.
Where are my hands? What happened to our bodies?
Okay.
Time.
Okay, Mr. Rushy Rush. I was going to slow build into it, but based on this week's episode, I turned us into dinosaurs.
What?
How would you do that?
Well, thank you, Heath. It's actually an interesting combination. It was the time machine, the cloning machine, and cereal box tops.
Oh, okay, fine. But where are we? When are we?
Now, okay, I'm going to be honest. I do not know. But I know it's dinosaur times, so enjoy, right? Eat some leaves, get into the
I'm a carnivore.
spirit.
I think I have an idea when we are. You do? How?
Well, I mean, look up and you see that big asteroid in the sky there?
Got it.
That'll do it.
We really did have everything, didn't we?
Okay, don't steal the last line from Don't Look Up.
Such a good movie.
Right? It is, though.
Jonah Hill.
Come on. You want to come?
Hello and welcome to Citation Needed, the podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we're experts. Because this is the internet, and that's how it works now. I'm Eli Bosnick, and I'll be leading this archaeological dig through history, but I'll need some fossils to dig up.
Okay.
First up, two men who remember when dinosaurs were neighborhood pests,
right.
Noah and Cecil.
Well, yeah, but I mean, how the hell else were you going to punch a time card back then? They were made of stone.
That grown Bronto burger is just not going to be the same. I don't know.
You guys are
And
old.
also joining us tonight, two men who can't get a side of ribs big enough to tip over their car no matter how nicely they ask, Heath and Tom.
Okay, you've seen my car. Just lots of load-bearing duct tape. It's part of the deal.
Okay, Eli, ribs are never a side. And also the trick is to get two orders, balance them out, one on each side.
Smart. There you go. Before we begin tonight, I'd like to take a second to thank our patrons. Patrons, without your money, we couldn't dig through the shale of our minds to unearth these precious, precious goofs that we put on display for you. Your names are written on that golden plaque thingy at the door of every museum. You know what I'm talking about, except the door is our hearts. Nailed it. If you'd like to learn how to join their ranks, be sure to stick around till the end of the show. And with that out of the way, tell us, Cecil, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event will we be talking about today?
The Bone Wars.
And Noah, you wanted to talk about dinosaurs without interruption since you were 4 years old, and now you're big enough that nobody gets to stop you. Are you ready to live out your childhood dreams and, I assume, pajamas?
Hey, look, I'm not the only grown adult with a fucking 14th favorite dinosaur, Eli. That's normal.
All right, so tell us, what were the Bone Wars?
Yeah, so I have to admit up front, they're probably not as cool as they sound. They have nothing to do with battles between skeleton armies or sword fights with erect penises. Incidentally, I could have used their other name, the Great Dinosaur Rush, but that doesn't really solve the isn't as cool as it sounds problem, so I didn't. The Bone Wars were actually a 2-decade-long feud between America's most prominent paleontologists in which both men competed for grander and grander finds while simultaneously doing everything in their power to sabotage the efforts of their rival.
Two, actually dude bros fighting. That does sound exactly like sword fighting with erect penises.
Okay, yeah, actually,
It's like our
metaphorically.
podcast before I brought us together with the power of love, you guys.
Now, a quick word to the pedants out there. The Bone Wars involve a lot of things, but they do not involve bones. Well, except in the sense that the people in the story had bones. When you're specifically talking to the pedants, you have to be exact on these things. But what we're talking about here are fossils, which are not bones, and I know that. You super duper don't need to send me an email or a tweet to tell me that. I'll intermittently be referring to them as dinosaur bones, the excavation sites as bone beds, and their conflicts as the Bone Wars, because that's what all of the sources call them, but not because I think that fossils are bones.
But the rest of us do think fossils are bones, so you can still tweet at Noah anyway.
I'm actually beginning to wonder if it's not Noah just sometimes tweeting at us from alternate accounts to vent.
I don't see why we
Not
would
put
want to
that past.
adjudicate that right now, Tom. It's not important. Now, of course, humans have known about fossils since prehistory. There are numerous examples of Paleolithic knives with fossilized starfish embedded in the handles. The Greek legend of griffins guarding great treasures probably comes from the abundance of fossilized Protoceratops skulls in the region that they associated with gold mines. Their legends of Cyclopses probably come from the fossilized skulls of a distant cousin of the elephant, which had like a huge trunk hole that looks like the space for a giant eye. And by the time Christianity took hold in Europe, fossilized shells on mountains were being used as evidence of Noah's flood. The point is that there's no moment in history where humans discovered fossils, just a point where we finally figured out what the fuck they were.
Bones, like you said earlier.
Bones planted by the devil to drive us from Christ. Keep up, Cecil. Yeah.
And pterodactyls are, in fact, dinosaurs that fought during the Civil War. No, it just said that.
Just said it,
No
right?
illusions.
Yes.
Part that bothers me the most there is the idea that pterodactyls were dinosaurs. Now, as easy as it is,
That was why I put it there.
I know, to laugh at those silly ancient Greeks and their silly beliefs about Cyclops and griffins and shit, it's worth emphasizing that the correct answer to the fossil question actually is they are the remains of great and terrible monsters that once roamed the earth in the ancient times. Right? Like all they got wrong was the type of monster.
That's a metaphor for our times.
Not intentionally, but yes. and let's be honest, much of the shit that they turned out to be was way the fuck crazier than huge one-eyed dude or winged lion.
Right, yeah. They were boneless winged lions. Got it. Yes, as you said.
Yeah, they're also probably wrong about what they look like because, you know, they're the scientific field. They got bullied by an action movie from the 90s. But, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. Go with your stuff.
Well, let's be honest. Action movies from the 90s bullied all the scientific fields. They're just the one that got it the worst. Yeah.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, by the way, one of the main figures that helped the ancient world solve the fossil puzzle was one Leonardo da Vinci. He was fascinated by fossils, spent a fuck ton of time drawing and classifying them. Now, he rejected the biblical deluge hypothesis because it was stupid and he wasn't. Right? He pointed out that when you find fossilized oyster shells, say, or whatever on a mountain, you'd find them in big groups like you would find them when they're alive, not a huge jumble of random shit like you'd expect if they got churned up and tossed onto a mountain miles away by a huge flood. Right? He proved that they were organic, which, believe it or not, was in dispute. But he also presented a pretty accurate theory as to how they formed, though he was at a loss to figure out how the hell they got onto mountainsides. Now, I should point out here, too, that the whole idea of extinction did not set well with the Christian worldview. Still doesn't. So Renaissance and Enlightenment thinkers shied away from that concept altogether. It wasn't until the groundbreaking work of French naturalist Georges Cuvier in 1796 that the scientific community would start to come around to that idea at all. He used comparative anatomy to prove that mastodon and mammoth skulls could not be like a variety of modern elephant, and he later showed that a fossil Megatherium skeleton from Paraguay was related to the modern sloth. This, combined with the emerging study of stratigraphy, which is the branch of geology that deals with rock layers, gave rise to the science of paleontology in the early 1800s.
Okay, how the fuck do you not believe in extinction? You're just like digging up a giant fucking T-Rex skull and you're like, oh, well, guess there's bound to be one of these around here somewhere.
Yeah,
Come on.
No,
Shine a laser somewhere, see what happens.
Shake a bag of teenagers.
now once we had a dedicated science studying like just fossils, it didn't take long to discover dinosaurs. They were huge, their fossils were abundant compared to other fossils, that is, and they were the coolest goddamn thing that the science would ever churn up. And for this, we have to thank one Mary Anning, a British fossil collector that discovered, among other things, the first ichthyosaur skeleton that was at least recognized as such, and the first and second complete plesiosaur skeletons. And as any proper dinosaur nerd will know, she made the first of these groundbreaking discoveries at the ripe old age of 11.
Right. But like most dinosaur nerds, she grew out of it when she hit puberty.
Did not.
Also, fun fact, the science people spent the next like 150 years in a furious blood feud about whether the plesiosaur would swim with a paddling motion like a sea turtle or with a rowing motion like like rowing. That's so much arguing about that.
That's important. Of
One
course,
other fun fact, that's the Loch Ness Monster, plesiosaur.
Yeah. Mhm. Of course, then as now, the general public was fascinated by dinosaurs. Kind of hard to get the average person fired up about a bazillion-year-old stromatolite, and people are surprisingly blasé about elephant-sized ancient sloths. But you tell them that giant lizards with femurs the size of full-grown people used to roam the earth, and generally speaking, you have their fucking attention. So this public interest thrusted paleontology to the forefront of the prestige sciences, which meant that if you were a 19th century naturalist with a huge ego, you were very likely to be a paleontologist. And that's my way of introducing the two men at the heart of the rivalry, Edward Drinker Cope and Othniel Charles Marsh.
Okay. Edward Drinker Cope. That's a little on the gin blossom, isn't it?
Isn't it, though? Now, I'll go ahead and tell you up front that this isn't really a good guy versus bad guy type story. Both of these guys are assholes, as we'll learn. So Cope was born into a wealthy family of Philadelphia Quakers in 1840. Marsh was born in upstate New York in 1831. And while his parents weren't rich, his uncle was George fucking Peabody, the miserly bastard known as the father of philanthropy. I know that sounds like a contradiction. It's not. He amassed a fortune of over $16 million in 1840s money. So we're talking like $500 million in today's money.
Yeah, if your uncle has $500 million and your parents aren't rich, one of your parents is a shitty sibling. Fun fact.
The mom in this case. So Marsh and Cope first met in Berlin in 1864. And if you're wondering why these two fighting age Americans were touring Europe the year before the Civil War ended, I should remind you they were rich. Now, at first they got along great. They spent a few days together bonding over their shared love of fossil collecting. They even named species after each other. But this honeymoon period would not last long. Hell, as near as I can tell, nobody got along with these guys for long. Cope was notoriously argumentative and had a hair temper. Marsh was introverted, aloof, and condescending. They also had titanic egos and never shared credit with anyone at any point in either of their professional careers.
You don't just get a podcast. Fuck. Like,
Right.
That's what that's for.
Now, normally this story is told as two friends slowly turning against each other due to professional rivalry. But I think that people just really like that dynamic in stories. This is not a Charles Xavier and Magneto type of thing. From pretty much the minute these two guys met, they were sniping at each other. So the first time the two went fossil hunting together, they went to a place that Cope's family owned in New Jersey. And during the trip, Marsh bribed the pit's operator to divert fossil finds to him instead of Cope.
Okay. Have we considered that this was a lover's quarrel, right? Because I can get us 2 seasons on Showtime if we can. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I know. Brokeback, Precambrian explosion, fossil strata. The name needs work. That's very, very bad. That's not awkward.
All right, so make no mistake. By the end of this, both men are going to be at fault, but Marsh very clearly fired the first shots in the Bone Wars.
Okay, nothing wrong with that, just as long as you don't get selfish and lose interest when you're
Right,
done.
exactly. Thank you. So not only was he bribing Cope's people from damn near the very day that they met, but he also went after Cope's professional reputation in a public forum. So Cope had published a paper in a prestigious journal where he recreated the skeleton of a prehistoric marine animal called an Elasmosaurus. And in the drawing, he placed the head at the end of the tail instead of the end of the neck. Now, in Cope's defense, this is an ichthyosaur. They have the ridiculously long necks and ridiculously short tails in comparison. Like he said, basically the Loch Ness Monster. So it's an easy mistake to make, I guess. But still, he pretty much literally had the thing's head up its own ass. So that's a tough one to live down when you're supposed to be an expert.
It's an Ouroboros.
Stop eating yourself. Stop eating yourself. Stop eating yourself.
Modern example of an expert with their hat up their own ass would be Dr. Oz. I
Yes,
think.
right.
Dr. Oz.
It's the Dr. Oz of his day. So this is the state of affairs around 1870. The groundwork for their legendary feud is set, and about that same time, it's becoming super clear that the truly great paleontological discoveries that America had to offer were out west. Now, a lot of the gunslinger outlaw reputation of the American West of this point is a product of mythology, but we're still talking about the Wild West here at the very height of its wildness. And ultimately, both men would use the region's lawlessness to their advantage in the wars to come.
All right. Well, Looks like there's going to be slippy slaps and hair pulling at high noon. So while I prepare myself for someone's glasses to get broken, we'll take a little break for an apropos of nothing.
Well, if it isn't my good friend Edward Cope.
Nathaniel Charles Marsh. I'll say I didn't expect to see you at this dig site.
Yes, well, my man Ali here has quite the eye for fossils.
As does my man Quasim.
Well, no reason we can't share the dig site. May the best man win.
Indeed, I will.
Hey, Ali, how's it going?
You know, the usual.
The guy find anything this week?
I don't know, man. He's an asshole when he finds stuff. He's an asshole when he doesn't find stuff. Who can tell?
Totally.
Aha!
Damn it, what did you find?
Nothing. It's just a shiny rock.
Ha!
Did I tell you what happened last week?
No, what happened?
Your guy comes over to me during my lunch break, and he says, "Hey, if you find any fossils, give them to me instead of your boss, okay?" And he gave me $50.
You're shitting. I swear to God, your guy did the exact same thing to me.
Too funny.
Too funny, right?
So, what do you say we give him another, 20 minutes? And we can bring him that piece of cow bone we planted last week? What do you think?
Could we make it 30? My wife's sister's in town.
Say no more. Say no more, man.
I'm doing science.
No, I'm doing science.
And we're back. When we left off, it was getting downright code namesian. Now, what happened next, Noah?
Wait, hold on. Code Namesian? What?
Oh, it's a board game that Noah and Heath play that may end our company. You'll see in July when you come for Matreon.
I didn't say yes yet.
Yeah, well, I scripted me inviting you into the show, so now it'll be weird if you don't.
Yep,
No,
true.
won't be weird at all. Not at all.
No, that's fair.
You underestimate Cecil.
All right, so thank you for that introduction back into my story, Eli. That was nice of you as host. So by 1872, both men realized they needed to go west where all the good fossils were. Now, they both had plenty of family money, but Marsh could afford to spend more lavishly on his expeditions. His gazillionaire uncle died in 1869, left him a substantial inheritance, but Cope had the better family connections, and he used them to secure a spot on the U.S. Geological Survey. And while that position didn't include a salary, it did put Cope in about the best position possible to get first crack at new fossils.
In archaeology, they call that hyptonepotism.
What?
Why do they call it that?
Because the pharaoh hypnotep.
What? So,
What
okay.
is happening right now?
The pharaoh?
Imhotep?
Yeah,
Got it.
it's a joke for our comedy podcast.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Noted.
Wink.
Thank
Joke.
you.
So it didn't take long for Cope to piss off pretty much everybody he worked with. At first, his boss, Ferdinand Hayden, actually really liked him because he tended to be overly dramatic in his writings, which made it way easier to justify the survey's expenses. But Cope's proclivity for wandering off for weeks at a time to do whatever the fuck he felt like would have tried the patience of any boss. He also ruffled the feathers of pretty much every other paleontologist in the area by essentially like setting up dig sites right next to theirs and scooping them on all the best fossils.
I drink your fossil shake.
Yes.
I drink it up.
Exactly. He was also known for quick excavations, which is exactly the opposite of the way you're supposed to do fucking paleontology, right? It's kind of supposed to be this slow, methodical, move a layer of dirt off with a little toothbrush kind of process, filled with excessive documentation. But Cope was practicing speed paleontology with the singular goal of describing more new species than anybody else.
Speed paleontology is when a giant meteor goes slower than 50 miles an hour and ends all dinosaur life on Earth. That's
Well, yeah.
A speed paleontologist awkwardly sitting across from a fossil at a bar. So do you come from a big family? Genus? Species?
So eventually, Hayden got so sick of Cope's shit that he started pretty much ignoring him. At one point, Cope shows up in fuck all Wyoming expecting men, wagons, and supplies for an expedition that he's going to do, and there's just nothing there at all. Damned if he's going to let that stop him. Cope then puts together his own last-minute team by hiring away a couple of guys that were in the area collecting fossils for Marsh. This was remarkably easy to do, by the way, as Marsh was in the bad habit of forgetting to pay people for a really long time. So now the two men would later tell Marsh that they actually led Cope away from all the best fossils, and that might have been true, but Marsh wasn't buying it, and he was furious. Now, up to this point, they'd been rivals, but after 1872, any pretense of professional courtesy was gone, and the two men were what the wiki described as in open hostilities. And yes, that would eventually include rival fossil hunting teams hurling rocks at one another to secure a particularly rich find.
You ever see two curling teams get into a brawl during a point? It's a lot like that, actually.
Giant monolith appears. They all start worshiping it and screaming. Just like, oh, okay.
So now the rivalry between the two men had already led to a shoddy, rushed science kind of an environment. But at this point, it got ridiculous. Okay, it got to where they would like fill back in their dig sites when they were done so the other guy wouldn't have a head start if they showed up to the same place. In at least one instance, in fact, Marsh had his assistant dynamite a dig site and blow up all the fossils they didn't have time to crate up. And
are you licking all the fossils? What the means?
And by the way, at the same time that this fight is playing out in the bone beds, it's also playing out in academic journals. The two are constantly sniping at each other, highlighting one another's mistakes, and fighting over the proper classification of new species.
I was only able to sequence half a genome before I got on my flight, so I beat my computer to death with a hammer. What? That's what
right,
you do.
yeah.
That's how you do this. That's how you do science.
So I should point out here that Marsh apparently sucked at the actual expedition part of this. He spent extravagantly. He didn't like roughing it at all. He preferred the part where he got to examine the finds to the part where he actually made the finds, but he still wanted credit for both. When he realized that he could get that just by controlling the purse strings of the actual expeditions, he opted for that, and after 1873, he never made an actual excursion himself again. Of course, since he kept forgetting to pay the people who were doing that work for him, a lot of the time he just ended up training the folks that would eventually go to work for Cope.
Okay, but I'm trying to figure out how he sucked at expeditions, because it sounds like he got everyone to do the work, took all the credit, and he didn't have to go camping.
Yeah, I guess for some people that's living the dream.
That's it. That's management.
Now, of course, by the mid-1870s, pretty much everybody out west with even a passing interest in fossil hunting had heard of one or both of these guys, and they knew that they would pay handsomely for dibs on a new find. There were multiple instances where amateur paleontologists would send both of them letters with samples of the new shit they found, and then like the race was on to see who could get that person enough money to shut the other guy out fast enough. Of course, since nobody actually owned most of the land out there, even when one of them secured a dig site for himself, all it took was a tiny bit of espionage to figure out where they were and then set up camp in their shadow, which happened a lot.
Hey, boss, that bush has been following us for like 45 minutes. Are you sure that other dinosaur guy isn't around?
Yeah, also, these are clearly baby back ribs you glued together and threw in the fucking ditch. Are we a decoy team for that guy?
So one of the biggest clashes between the two men came over the Como Bluffs find. This was a huge and incredibly prolific fossil bed in Wyoming discovered by two workers for the Union Pacific Railroad. Now, they know that Marsh is the better financed of the two, so they send him a letter identifying themselves only as Harlow and Edwards. Their real names were William Harlow Reed and William Edwards Carlin, and I guess they needed at least partial pseudonyms in case Marsh decided to reverse engineer where their jobs had taken them and find out where the bone bed was that way. Their letter also mentioned that there were, quote, other interested parties scouting in the area, end quote. So Marsh immediately sends one of his guys to take a look at the find, and the second his assistant confirms that it's real, Marsh sends out a healthy check to secure exclusivity. Of course, he makes it out to their pseudonym, so they can't cash the damn thing, but it did tell them that Marsh was serious, so they agreed to shut Cope out.
They're going to the gas station. Is there any way I can exchange this check that isn't in my name for Camel Cash? Can I do that instead?
See, this story is why adults need to keep taking dibs seriously. We could have solved so many of the world's problems with a well-respected dib system.
Yeah, right. The fucking war in Ukraine, for example. Yeah. Now, of course, eventually, Cope found out about this huge find and he sent his people right into the heart of it. And that's where the conflict really earns its reputation. For the next 15 years, these two guys would be financing digs pretty much nonstop in pretty much the same ass place. Their teams would dig through the spring and summer, and then they would spend the fall and the winter crating up everything that they'd gotten and sending it east. And in the meantime, they'd hire other guys to go out and just break all the equipment the rival team was using. At one point, Cope's guys even managed to lock Marsh's team out of the train station in the middle of winter, forcing them to load literally tons of fossils outdoors in a Wyoming blizzard.
Feel like they were like, hey, guys, this dinosaur feud, it's getting murdery. Right? I'm not saying we're there, but we're like close to murdery. We all feel that it's close to murdery right now.
I feel
right?
like it got murdery, yeah.
Time-outy.
Now, a lot of people try to put a cherry on this story by pointing out all the great discoveries that were made because of this rivalry, but that betrays a misunderstanding of like how science works, honestly. These fossils were there for anybody to find. Somebody was going to find them regardless. The insane rush to catalog the most possible species doubtless destroyed potential discoveries even before they started fucking dynamiting used quarries for fear that the other guy would find an awesome tooth in it if they didn't. That being said, they did discover a fuck ton of new species, including strong contenders for best overall dinosaur like Stegosaurus, Triceratops, Apatosaurus, Diplodocus, and Allosaurus.
Pterodactyl.
It's like a few years after blowing up
Shut
all
your
the good
mouth.
dig sites, each of them is just trying to wire up alligator heads onto increasingly improbable bodies. What do we have left? Pigeons? That's all? Yeah, fuck it. Bring him here. Bring some more wire.
Yeah.
No one's going to believe this shit. Pigeons.
Kirk Cameron will get his crocoduck after all. Now, ultimately, Marsh would win the Bone Wars, discovering 80 new dinosaur species to Cope's 56. Both men, though, would be bankrupted by their obsession, and they would never reconcile in the slightest. In fact, when Cope found out he was dying, and this is my favorite fact to come out of researching this, one of his last acts was to issue a challenge to Marsh that both would agree to have their brains measured after they die to see who was bigger. Like at the time, they believed that brain size was like an accurate measure of intelligence. Now, Marsh,
Where do you measure from? The base? You go from the
It is
base?
the base, Tom. That
You gotta
counts.
press the
It's from
fupa
the- yeah.
down.
You're allowed to push it down.
You
Yep.
stretch it.
I got it.
You
Can you
stretch it
can
as
you stretch it
as
out a
goes.
little?
Yeah, no, you can stretch it as much as it'll stretch. No, that's
You get
fair.
10 minutes before the measuring.
Now, to be clear, though, Marsh did not take him up on this challenge, but Cope's brain was preserved by the University of Pennsylvania just in case and is still there.
And if you had to summarize what you learned in one sentence, what would it be?
The Wild West was so much cooler than the movies give it credit for.
All right. And are you ready for the quiz?
I've been ready for this quiz for 65 million years.
All right, Noah. Which of the following is my top choice to do the hip hop soundtrack for the movie about Marsh and Cope? A. Snoop Digg. Diggy dog. B. T-Rex in effect. C. Bone Thugs in Disharmony. Sorry, okay. Also D. Fossil Thugs in Disharmony.
There it is. D. It's D. Thank you.
That's correct.
No, we heard a lot today about bad behavior around dinosaurs. We should focus on polite dinosaurs. What species is the most formal? A, the plesiosaur. B, the Swankliosaurus. C, His Honorable Lordship Leducus. Or D, Suiton Tyrannosaurus.
Suit tie.
That's pretty
great.
fucking good, but I believe that the correct answer is B, the Swankylosaurus.
Swanklosaurus. Correct. You are correct.
All right. Noah, what is the best dinosaur?
Oh, that's the Ankylosaurus. That's easy.
All right.
Wow, fast answer.
Stupid question.
Wow.
Didn't even have a second.
I mean,
Tom
best is a little
there.
ambiguous. That's the
Yeah.
coolest one. I thought it was probably what you were asking.
Like, what dinosaur would win like a dinosaur tournament UFC?
Yeah, like UFC style.
Ooh.
Oh, that's probably be one of the Titanosaurs, right? One of the gigantic ones that would just like be able to step on everybody else. Right?
Classic
It'd be like
step-on
the
move.
like the
Yeah.
wedge and BattleBots.
Oh, there you go.
Was there a Hoist
Dinosaur
Gracie
shaped like a
dinosaur?
wedge with a giant hammer that comes out.
Yeah.
It's just a dinosaur rotating at very, very high speeds. That's
Gunnosaurus.
a Spiniosaurus. All right, Noah, which movie is strangely not about this story? A, The Bone Collector. B, Because They Aren't Bones. C, Tweet at Noah, They Aren't Bones.
The correct answer is D. None of the above, damn it.
C, Tweet at Noah.
No, it isn't. I actually win this one.
That's right. Noah got to talk about dinosaurs for 33 minutes,
It
so
wasn't Z.
he wins.
Damn right he does. And I would like a Cecil essay next week.
Fantastic. All right. Well, for Noah, Tom, Cecil, and Heath, I'm Eli Bosnick. Thanking you for hanging out with us today. We'll be back next week, and by then, Cecil will be an expert on something else. Between now and then, you can help us from going extinct by listening to Tom and Cecil over on Cognitive Dissonance, or Heath, Noah, and myself on The Scathing Atheist, God-Awful Movies, The Skeptocrat, or D&D Minus. And if you'd like to help keep this show going, you can make a per-episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod, or leave us a 5-star review everywhere you can. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, check out past episodes, connect with us on social media, or check the show notes, be sure to check out citationpod.com. Mine, I think.
No, it's mine.
God, what are they fighting over now?
I think of the shit you took this afternoon.
Nice.
Science.
I'm doing science. Nailed it. If you'd like to learn how to join their ranks, be sure to stick around till the end of the show. And with that out of the way, tell us, Noah, what person, but no, wait. And with that out of the way, tell us, Heath, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event will we be talking about today?
Heath says the Bone Wars.
Am I supposed to do a Heath impression now?
No.
or-
Okay, so here's the thing. We shouldn't adjudicate this on air. I've written in Heath every time I've been the host the last 4 times, and he changes it to Noah.
Well, no, I changed it to the person who's doing the essay because it makes more sense to me. So that's how I'd like to do it.
That's how you like
Okay.
Eli to do it?
That's
Okay,
how I
then-
like to not
you know
me do
that
it.
Okay.
It's a consent issue.
Okay.
I could consent.
Heath
do
doesn't
it.
consent to being on this show. It seems like he does.
I'll do it if you want.
And with that out of the way, tell us, Cecil, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event will we be talking about today?
Fantastic.
I love Cecil so much.
And with
Cecil?
that out of the way,
Cecil, look into my heart. I love you.
and with that out of the way, tell
I
us,
asked for
Noah.
a thing very nicely, and we can't just occasionally do what I asked
you
for
didn't,
nicely.
You didn't ask for it. That's the crazy thing. You didn't ask for it. You just changed it 4 weeks in a row. I had to
Eli.
know.
I'm sorry.
can't
I'll
be
do it.
very
I'll do it for
consequential
real
to
this
you.
time. I'll do it for
This
real.
is so. I have
real.
been wondering why it was for years. It's in
real.
my heart.
For real. Here we go. For real. You don't have to
And
give me the
with
line.
that-
You don't have to, no, you don't have to give me the line. I already have it. I already had it. You
All right,
did
got
a
it.
great job. You did a great job.
Thank you.
You know about the beat that's coming, right?
I'm not going to do it. I was thinking
Okay.
about it, but I'm not going to do it.
It's funnier if you do it.
The Bone Wars.
If he was going to do
The
that, he
Bone
would
Wars.
have made you
Bone
say it
Wars.
again.
Yeah.
I think we should do it at the
And
same
Noah.
time, Cecil. Want to do it at the same time?
Bone
We should do it at the same time. All right, wait. Bone Wars. The Bone Wars.
Bone Wars. God, what a mess to edit.
That is.
That all
And Noah.
stays. That's gold.
It's not going to stay.
Or, hey, why not just see us all hang out in July together in New
Not
Jersey?
happening.
See,
Super
I called back
unlikely.
to it. Now it's really hard to edit out.
No, it's not.
And if you'd like to help keep this show going, you can make a per episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod, or leave us a 5-star review